So the model, and I've seen this on your website and read a little bit about it, but I'd love for you to
hmm
talk about the model. TINSA, TINSA is like an acronym, right? Can you talk and just elaborate on what is this all about?
Yeah, so TINSA stands for trauma-induced sex addiction. The N is induced, right? Trauma-induced sexual addiction. And the theory behind TINSA is pretty straightforward. Sex addiction, just like any addiction, arises in the life of someone to regulate a dysregulated nervous system. So trauma and the inability to regulate off of a caregiver, either because that caregiver was not there or not emotionally present or dangerous or not a safe person. This young person doesn't have the ability to regulate with their caregiver. So their stressors and the hurts and pains and traumas of their early life, they have to figure out a way to regulate that nervous system. So, this introduction of like I said, maladaptive sexual behavior, it arises to help regulate that nervous system. It's not a revolutionary idea. What was interesting about TINSA is that when it came out, 10 years ago, it was right at the crest of the wave of how we were seeing how trauma affects so much within the body, within the brain, within the nervous system. Making that simple connection that, well, what if sexual addiction and problematic sexual behaviors and compulsivity around this behavior is more than just a behavior? It's more than just a character issue. There's some root here. There's some trauma here that's trying to be managed and trying to be regulated. And what if we looked at it from that lens and started to treat it from a trauma point of view without removing accountability for the choices that are being made, but meeting that accountability and also the root of the behavior. So many guys want to know why I do the things that I do. I don't understand why I keep doing these things. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it again. And I don't particularly even like doing it when I do it. And I definitely don't like it when I'm done doing it. So why do I keep doing this again and again and again? And there's some nuance there. I'm sure, Michael, I'm sure like a lot of guys will overlay their sexual behaviors with a narrative that sounds like, no, I do really like this stuff and I just need a new relationship. I just need to marry my affair partner, or I just need to get a divorce and just be free to do what I want. And that's really just who I am. I'm a bad guy who does bad things. But below the surface of that narrative that they've created is all this wounding and hurt and pain, and are not actually getting what they think they're getting out of the behaviors. And that's the definition of an addiction, right? I'm doing the same things over and over again, trying to get a different result. So when guys come to us and they want to know the why, what we're doing is we're gonna help identify some of those root and core traumas that connect directly to their sexual acting out behaviors. And a lot of times there's a light bulb there. Insight only gets you so far. You actually have to do the trauma works, of unpacking those experiences and feeling through them. But that's what TINSA sets you up to do, right? To start looking at your sexual addiction, your compulsive behaviors, the problematic behaviors through the lens of, okay, I am doing this to cope with the dysregulation in my body that arose from trauma in my life. And, in all the work that I've done, and I'm sure you have experienced this too, I've yet to work with someone with sexual addiction that doesn't have a trauma narrative of some type or form. Now, maybe they're minimizing it, or maybe they're or whatever, but it's there, right? And we can get into the minutia of kind of what all those narratives can kind of look like sometimes. But it's been revolutionary for our clients to experience their addiction that way. And the way I talk about it is ultimately we have to learn to hold two things at the same time, which is really hard for addicts to do. We tend to be black and white thinkers, all or nothing, right? But if I can hold two ideas at the same time in terms of, what TINSA can mean for me, it would look something like this. In one hand, I hold the truth that I have been the victim of trauma. And in the other hand, I have to hold the truth that I have perpetrated trauma into other people's lives in my addiction. And, and I explain this to our clients that if I let go of my, identity or the reality that I have been victimized in my trauma, then I'm just going to hold on to the fact that I've perpetrated trauma and that I've done bad things, that I'm a bad guy, that it's done bad things, I'm a monster, I'm a pervert, or whatever terrible things that people make up and tell themselves internally. But if I let go of my accountability for the damage that I've done and only hold on to my role as a victim of trauma, then I'm not responsible for the choices that I made. Can't you see how hurt I am? And can't you see all the damage that my parents did or my abuser did? And this is why I do those things. So you're not allowed to be mad at me for the ways that I've hurt you. It's dysfunctional either way, right? So I have to hold two truths at the same time. And
Mhm.
that's TINSA in a nutshell, right? That I have to recognize the traumatic roots of my behavior, and I have to take accountability for the trauma that I've brought into other people's lives as well.
Yeah, there's so many truths to unpack in there and so profound. So TINSA, trauma induced sexual addiction. I think what you just said is so profound, holding both truths together, because if we just continue to think of ourselves as a bad person, that just continues to feed into the narrative that
Right,
we have had all the years,
right,
the dysregulated nervous system. Okay. If I just keep believing that about myself, I'm not going to have a regulated nervous system when I'm
right.
continually living in that narrative. It's not healing. But the good news is, about holding both of these together at the same time, these concepts, is that there is a way out. There
Yeah,
is healing and there is hope.